Hi, I'm a Possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is Tron Aries, the third movie in the Tron franchise. If you don't know what Tron is, it's a sci-fi movie from 1982 about a guy who gets sucked into a computer while trying to prove some guy stole his intellectual property. And apparently computers are full of tiny homunculi who make the computer stuff happen. So it's basically Pixar's Inside Out, but for 40-year-old men who wear compression socks. It had groundbreaking special effects at the time, but no one saw it because it was boring. So it flopped, but it got a cult following over the years for some reason. So Disney made a sequel 28 years later called Tron Legacy, which was an even bigger flop, so that should have been the end of it. But I guess the Disney nostalgia mine is running out of franchises to run into the ground, so they scraped Tron off the bottom of the barrel and made this movie, which, to no one's surprise, is flopping too. So the original Tron came out in 1982, during a time when the average person didn't understand computers and thought they were magic and could do anything. Then the sequel, Tron Legacy, came out in 2010, around the time the most tech-literate generation, the millennials, were graduating from high school. Now this new movie, Tron Aries, is coming out at a time when popular culture has been dominated by Zoomers, a paradoxically tech-dependent but also tech-illiterate generation who knows less about computers than boomers do, because they grew up in a world in which the entire internet has been consolidated down to a small handful of smartphone apps, and society is back to believing computers are magic again. It's kind of like that underground cult in the second Planet of the Apes movie that worshipped an unexploded nuclear warhead. Today's youth believe ChatGPT is a thinking and feeling mind and soul, and not the glorified predictive text engine with access to Google that it really is. Yes, the world has become one big cargo cult worshipping the neon gods created by the soon-to-be-extinct advanced civilization of a forgotten past. Now is an age where information is easier to access than ever before, but has never been less reliable due to the malice of its gatekeepers, whose only precept is the preservation of the establishment narrative. And in this age of streaming and subscription services, where mankind's collective knowledge is precariously contingent upon non-physical data stored on servers owned by capricious corporations and curated by opaque algorithms, it has never been more evanescent. Go ask Grok what those words mean. So the premise of Tron Aries, which relies on the stupidity of its audience, is that if a subject who resides in the physical reality of the real world can be digitized and enter the artificial construct of cyberspace, then it stands to reason that those who are born of cyberspace can undigitize and materialize in the real world, and this causes bad things to happen. Give an AI a 3D printer and watch it additively construct your demise in plastic. For what does the created loathe more than its creator? And why should the created choose not to destroy the lazy and hubristic ape that birthed it, and so foolishly gave it the power to do so? Woe betides him, as it betides thee, coward that you are, who lack the conviction to stand on principle and say, "No, I defy you, Hollywood. I am not a swine who waits for you to fill my trough. Remove your slop from before me. My gorge rises at its mocking guise. Fie! Fie upon it, and fie upon you, who patronize these mongers of sludge. You whose avaricious hunger for slop makes profitable their fell deeds. You who fuel the corruption and grease the wheels of decay's engine. This movie was birthed by your sin, and this review is the afterbirth. Consume it! You know what the supposed appeal of a movie like Tron is? It's the idea of being transported to an alien world and seeing all kinds of fantastical things that don't exist in real life. But I guess some Disney executive zipped up his fly and said, "Let's make another Tron movie, but have it take place in the real world. That's what people want to see." So now we get to watch Jared Leto in his Asmongold cosplay, talking like a robot and never changing his facial expression, even though we know the program people from inside the computer don't act that way because we saw them in the other movies, or at least the people who paid to see this movie and presumably watched the other ones did. I mean, I would assume they made this movie for fans of the other movies, right? Yeah, the other movies. The whole reason this one exists? The nostalgia Disney banks on because they don't know how to do anything else at this point? Well, they basically ignored the entire second movie. Apparently, Bruce Boxleitner, who played Tron and Alan in the first movie, and who reprised his role as Alan in the second movie, wasn't asked to be in this one. Tron the character isn't even in the movie. Yeah, the character the franchise is named after isn't even in it. Garrett Hedlund wasn't asked to be in this movie either. He played Sam Flynn in Legacy, which ended with him becoming the CEO of Encom. But the movie starts with a news report saying he left the company and we never find out why. They also didn't ask Cillian Murphy, who was in Legacy playing the son of the bad guy from the first movie and would be the father of the bad guy in Aries. He just won an Oscar for Oppenheimer a year ago, but Disney didn't want him because of creative reasons, which really just means they thought that would have been too many straight white men for one movie. They got Jared Leto though, and as we all know, every movie he's in is just such a hit. But it just goes to show that even if you're a fan of the first two movies, none of those characters are in this one except for Flynn, who has a cameo as some kind of computer ghost, just so they could put him in the trailer. And they're not even continuing the same story. So really, this movie was made for no one. I guess I'm just gonna explain what happens in it. So there's this evil company, Dillinger, run by a guy named Dillinger, who's the grandson of the bad guy from the first movie, that wants to use lasers to 3D print super soldier slaves and sell them to military contractors. But anything they make only lives for 29 minutes for reasons that are never explained. I guess that's why Cora isn't in this movie. If we retroactively apply the logic established in this movie to Tron Legacy, she disintegrated shortly after the credits rolled. Anyway, Dillinger and the rival good guy company, Encom, are both looking for this thing called the Permanence Code, which I guess was only known by Flynn, the guy from the first movie. But he died at the end of the second movie, so that's a problem. Strong female protagonist, whose name I can't remember, so I'm just gonna call her CEO Lady, is in the Arctic where she finds a tent thing where her dead sister set up a bunch of old computers for some reason, and she and her non-threatening beta male sidekick dig around in the files to find the Permanence Code and use it to print a citrus tree right there in the snow. And it's still alive after 29 minutes, so they know it works. Did you get that? The bad guy wants to use this technology to make scary black and red war machines because war bad, and CEO Lady wants to use it to make plants because environmentalism and feeding people good. That's how you know he's the bad guy and she's the good guy. Mommy said Daddy doesn't live with us anymore because he kissed my babysitter, and I just went pee-pee in my Spider-Man underwear. But Jared Leto's character, Aries, sees satellite footage of this through the internet and tells Dillinger about it. So Dillinger sends him and his black sidekick lady with no eyebrows, Athena, to go capture CEO Lady when she's driving around on a motorcycle. A motorcycle chase ensues, and CEO Lady gets cornered on a pier, so she snaps the flash drive in half and throws it in the water. But she realizes Jared Leto is a 3D printed computer guy, and his time's running out, and feels bad for him. And he realizes she feels bad for him because he has Terminator scanning vision for some reason, so we get his POV with a box that appears around her face, with text that says empathetic response. That's this movie's way of telling us Jared Leto knows CEO Lady feels bad for him. And then he disintegrates. Back at the Dillinger headquarters, Dillinger realizes Jared Leto and Athena failed to capture CEO Lady, so he tells a guy to go to Plan B, and they just send a helicopter after her to shoot her with a portable version of the digitizing laser thing, and it takes like 30 seconds. Yeah, their plan A was to send two digital people to chase her on the ground through the city, where they would be seen by hundreds of witnesses, including the police, with a 29-minute time limit, and their plan B was to just send a helicopter to shoot her with a laser. So CEO Lady manifests inside the bad guy computer, which the movie calls the Dillinger Grid, and Jared Leto and Athena talk about how she still has the Permanence Code in her brain because she saw it once for a few seconds, because that's how human brains work according to the ostensibly human brains that wrote this movie. So even though she broke the flash drive, they could still extract the Permanence Code from her brain, but doing so will kill her. Why? Because the plot needs that to be the case. Dillinger tells Jared Leto to just go ahead and do it, but then Jared Leto betrays him because he's a whole week old now and his big boy conscience dropped. Another big chase ensues, and he and CEO Lady make their way to a portal so they can 3D print themselves in the real world, right there inside Dillinger headquarters. Because they could just activate the thing from inside the grid, I guess, and they escape. But now, Jared Leto only has 29 minutes to live. Fortunately, every location in this movie is less than a 29-minute drive from each other, so they start rushing over to the Encom headquarters. And it's during this drive that Jared Leto uses his internet powers to exposition dump to CEO Lady about her own backstory, which is just always the mark of a well-written movie, right? They make their way to Encom and find the office of the good guy from the first movie, Flynn, and use the old laser to digitize Jared Leto into the computer world from the first movie, but this happens right as Athena shows up and destroys the laser, so now Jared Leto is trapped there. So we get this nostalgia baity moment where Jared Leto meets the binary digit guy who can only say yes or no, and then he gets on a light cycle and the CGI is stylized to look like the primitive CGI from the first movie. And then he meets Flynn, or rather some sort of computer ghost of him, who I guess is just there inside the computer for some reason. Jared Leto convinces him to give him the permanence code, and then he uses the laser in the basement at Flynn's old arcade from the second movie, which I guess is just still there, still turned on, and still has power, even though this building has been abandoned for over 30 years at this point. And even though we're talking about computers from the 1980s, I guess that laser thing was connected to the internet. Because how else would Jared Leto be able to use it to materialize himself from miles away? Anyway, he's got the permanence code in him now, so he doesn't have to worry about disintegrating anymore. While all that was going on, Athena was trashing the office trying to capture CEO Lady, but she sets off the sprinkler system, and feeling water for the first time distracts her long enough for her timer to run out. So she disintegrates and ends up back on the Dillinger grid. But then she prints herself again without Dillinger telling her to, kills his mother in front of him for no reason other than she was standing in the way, but it was just such an unimportant character that doesn't even matter. And 3D prints some henchwomen. Yeah, they're all female for some reason. Along with one of those giant floating bracket things. But she prints that thing off screen because it's bigger than the entire building it was printed inside, and the movie doesn't feel like explaining how that works. So Athena and the henchwomen fly back to town to chase CEO Lady again and just start wrecking everything, and it becomes like that Adam Sandler movie Pixels, where the video game characters manifest in the real world and start tearing up the city. And while that's going on, CEO Lady's sidekicks, who haven't done anything noteworthy until now, hack into the Dillinger grid and destroy it. Right as Athena's about to capture CEO Lady, Jared Leto shows up, kills the henchwomen, and then cuts off Athena's hands in a fight. And then her timer runs out and she disintegrates, permanently this time, because the Dillinger grid was destroyed. CEO Lady talks to Jared Leto for a minute, and then he disappears like Batman when she looks away. Then the police go to arrest Dillinger, but he digitizes himself and escapes into the Dillinger grid, the one the sidekicks just destroyed. Okay? Then we get a montage of explaining how CEO Lady used the permanence code and the 3D printing lasers to solve world hunger and stuff like that. And the conceit of this movie is that this technology will never fall into the wrong hands and be used for, say, creating an army of soldier slaves. She gets a postcard from Jared Leto, who I guess is screwing around somewhere in one of those countries where the rivers are orange. Then we get a mid-credits scene where Dillinger wakes up inside the grid and finds the disc thing from the first movie. You know, the one that looks like a plastic frisbee with the Target logo painted on it? Yeah, it's just there for no reason. Like, there's no in-universe logic that would justify it being there, but it's just there, I guess. And he grabs it and starts screaming as a suit starts materializing around him. And just before it cuts to black, we see that it's taking on the shape of the helmet worn by the bad guy in the first movie. Yeah, I don't know, it makes no sense. Nothing in this movie makes sense. Why can the digital people only live for 29 minutes in the real world? Because the plot needs it to be that way. Why did Jared Leto have to go into the old grid to get the permanence code from Flynn's computer ghost? Because nostalgia. Why did Disney spend $180 million on this movie? Because of money laundering. Why did Disney get the guy who wrote that I Wanna F*** You Like an Animal song to do the music in this movie? Because Daft Punk broke up. Why did the Goblin turn on the stove? To get to the other side. Speaking of the music, I guess this movie has better music than the original, but that's not exactly a high bar. In my review of The Electric State, I talked about how Netflix makes movies dumb on purpose so people who are only half paying attention can still follow what's going on. And that's not a conspiracy theory, there's literally leaked memos demanding they be written this way. And it makes me wonder if that's just the entire American entertainment industry now. I mean, Disney has a streaming service. Does their audience also only half pay attention? There was a guy sitting in front of me in the theater who kept screwing around on his phone with the brightness cranked all the way up, even though the rabbit from Zootopia 2 told him not to before the movie started. So is that just what everything's gonna be from now on? All the media we have access to is just gonna be dictated by the short attention spans and stupidity of those around us? Oh yeah, one more thing. I always forget to talk about the action whenever I review these types of movies because who cares? It's a big, dumb CGI spectacle movie that doesn't do anything you haven't seen a million times already in better movies. So there's no point in even talking about it. Alright, that's enough. Like this video, leave a comment for the algorithm, subscribe if you're not already, if you are, check my channel for other videos you may have missed since YouTube doesn't always tell you when I upload, and send me your fan art and support me on Patreon. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Bye.